A Romanian hacker has been extradited to the U.S., and it may hurt Hillary Clinton. Now, keep in mind, the FBI's criminal investigation is not a coincidence. This is coming through an intelligence source. So this hacker allegedly accessed the email account of Hillary Clinton's confidant, Sidney Blumenthal, one of Clinton's most prolific advice givers when she was Secretary of State. So it was through that hack of Blumenthal's account that Clinton's use of a personal account first came to light. Charlie Sykes, a Wisconsin conservative radio host and never Trump supporter, is with me now. Charlie, really glad to have you on the show. Thank you for the time. So what do you think the chances are that the FBI is actually going to question this hacker?
Well, I think it's very, very high that they're going to question this hacker. This is not going away. There's going to be no good news for Hillary Clinton on the email scandal. And this has got to be hanging over the Democratic nomination fight, because the reality is she is a deeply flawed candidate. She doesn't have any momentum. And there's always that possibility this story is going to blow up. So with the possible exception of Donald Trump, I think any Republican is going to be plausible and electable.
Okay, plausible and electable. Before we move on to Donald Trump, I just want to ask you, I was speaking with my colleague Ed Henry, and we were talking about Senator Sanders going to the Vatican. Again, just to be clear, not at the Pope's invitation. Sanders will be there for a kind of conference. Maybe he meets the Pope, maybe he doesn't. What do you make of that trip a few days before the New York primary?
Well, it's pretty obvious what he's trying to do there. I think that having read the transcript of his interview with the New York Daily News, maybe he should spend some time with some finance people, some people who know something about banking and economics, because I'm not sure he's going to pick up any of those.
Well, it's surprising, because that's his big issue.
Yeah, it is surprising. You would think that he would have some substance there. And, kind of remarkable that you have two leading candidates for president who, in the last 2 weeks, have been exposed for not knowing stuff that should be in their wheelhouse.
So, Charlie, speaking of people not knowing stuff that should be in their wheelhouse, many people across this country have replayed part of the conversation that you had with Donald Trump, where he didn't realize that you were a never Trump guy. You had to tell him that live on your show. We want to just play a quick clip for people who haven't heard.
Mr. Trump, before you called into my show, did you know that I'm a hashtag never Trump guy?
That I didn't know.
Okay. Well, because I thought it was interesting, and people were wondering, does Donald Trump know what Charlie Sykes has said about him in the past?
No.
I would give you credit either way on it, but I was wondering.
I understand. But no, I didn't know that. But I assume you're also an intelligent guy. I know you're an intelligent guy.
Is this your standard, that if a supporter of another candidate, not the candidate himself, does something despicable, that it's okay for you, personally, a candidate for President of the United States, to behave in that same way? I expect that from a 12-year-old bully on the playground, not somebody who wants the office held by Abraham Lincoln.
But he started it, so.
But I just remember, we're not on.
You just said it's fine with
me. We're not on a playground. We're running for president of the United States.
I agree with that 100%.
I do give Trump credit for staying with you because you were grilling him, as it is your job to do so. But there's this new poll out that shows that 7 out of 10 Americans hold an unfavorable view of him. I know for you as a never Trump person, that's not a particular surprise, but you do have to give him credit for honesty. He said clearly, I didn't know you were never Trump, and he stayed on the line and engaged with you. Does he get any points in your brain for that?
Yeah, he gets some points, but what you saw in, starting with that in the next 2 weeks, you kind of had the perfect storm of boorishness, bad judgment, and incompetence. And I think this is starting to catch up with him. The boorishness is the juvenile taunts, his refusal to pivot to be more presidential, which, by the way, would have been a good idea before the Wisconsin primary. The incompetence in not doing basic vetting, which now you're seeing, story after story about how the campaign is not doing some of the basic blocking and tackling in state after state, the organizations. And then the bad judgment of lashing out at women's looks, the number of offensive things he said, his decision to come into Wisconsin and attack Scott Walker, all of these things. And then, of course, the answer to the questions about abortion, the answer to a variety of questions that really kind of expose the fact that, whether you think he's a liberal or a conservative, that really Donald Trump has not spent 30 seconds thinking about some of these issues. And I think you kind of had that perfect storm coming together over the last couple of weeks, and it's starting to be reflected, finally, in some of these national polls.
Charlie, I want to ask you, though, people still love him. They say he's honest. They are pleased that he is not a career politician, and they feel like he is reflecting, whether it's their frustration, their concern, there are a lot of people who say, that is my candidate, singularly. Do you not have some sort of respect for at least bringing more people, as he has claimed, under the tent?
Okay, now, this is in the context of noting that 70% of Americans disapprove of him, including half of Republicans. Yes, he's got a base of support. It's a very solid base of support. But I think what we saw in Wisconsin is where you have smart, engaged conservatives who actually understand what a real conservative looks like. They were not buying what Donald Trump was selling. And when he brought his clown car into Wisconsin, it did not go well for him. So you're looking at numbers that, I mean, I've been around for a while now. I don't think I've ever seen a major presidential candidate with these kinds of disapproval numbers. When you're talking about huge numbers of women, conservative women, who are just repelled by the guy. Yes, he's tapped into something, but he's tapped into something that I think that the more people are paying attention to whether or not he's got substance behind some of the rhetoric, they're realizing that, okay, the circus was entertaining for a while, but at some point we actually have to elect a president of the United States. And I think that's what's being reflected in these numbers.
Charlie, one last question. Even for people who feel so strongly as you do, #NeverTrump, is Ted Cruz, is Senator Cruz likable enough to compete against whether it's Clinton or Sanders or anybody else? That is to say, is the disapproval of Donald Trump enough to help Cruz?
Yes. Ted Cruz is likable enough in a campaign in which nobody is particularly likable. By the time we get to November, nobody's going to like any of these candidates. What Ted Cruz will at least bring is he will be able to intelligently articulate conservative ideas. And I think that that's going to be a contrast to the kind of incoherent buffoonery that we get from Donald Trump.
Charlie Sykes, we are glad to have you here. We thank you for your time. Congratulations on the success of your radio show. We know it has numerous hundreds of thousands of followers, millions actually. All right, well, the New York Times